Meeting back to order of the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education. Item 4.0, pledge, 4.1, Pledge of Allegiance. Superintendent, would you like to lead us?
Thank you. Please stand. Ready? Salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Superintendent. Item 4.2, we're going to hold off on for 4.2. We're going to welcome our new student board member, Jacqueline Zhang, who will be joining us at our next scheduled board meeting. Do we have the broadcast statement? I don't know it by heart. No, thank you. All right. All right. Broadcast statement. This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being recorded in its entirety and will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse. Today's meeting will air Monday, August 9th at noon and Wednesday, August 11th at 6 p.m. It will also webcast on Metro 14 Live, saccounty.net, and can be viewed on Metro Cable 14's YouTube channel. The public has been given the opportunity to address the board through public comment, either by submitting comments which are posted on our website or by speaking during the meeting. Members of the public who wish to speak during the meeting submitted a speaker form by noon today and were sent a link to participate. When it is your turn to provide comment, we will call on you to provide your comment orally. Your video will not be on. Please always limit comments during public comment to items that are not on the agenda. If you do comment on an item that is on the agenda, we will ask that you please defer your comments until the item comes up on the agenda. All right. Item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
Yes, President Pritchett, there are 4 announcements and the superintendent will make those now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to announce that the board, by a vote of 6-1, with Board Member Phillips voting no, approved the appointment of Ms. Erin Hansen as Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Congratulations, Ms. Hansen. I'm also pleased to announce that the board, by unanimous vote, approved the appointment of Mr. Ignacio Zarate as principal of Crocker Riverside Elementary School. Congratulations, Mr. Zarate. I'm also pleased to announce that the board, by unanimous vote, approved the appointment of Mr. Brandon Frink as principal of Alger Creek Elementary School. Congratulations, Mr. Frink. And lastly, I'm pleased to announce that the board, by unanimous vote, approved the appointment of Mr. Stuart Bushnell as principal of Woodbine Elementary School. Congratulations, Mr. Bushnell.
Thank you, Superintendent, and congratulations to all of our new principals, and thank you to all the staff that was involved in that process. All right, item 6.0. Agenda adoption. Can I get a motion to approve? All right, got a motion, get a second? All right, a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, item 7.0, public comment. And we have 10 public comments. We will allow the 2 minutes for each public comment. Ms. Moretti?
Yes, our first speaker is David Gonzalez.
Hello, school board. I'm an employee of the district. With a vote of no confidence in Aguilar, educators wanted you all to be aware and see for yourself firsthand the machinations of the district through bad faith bargaining. You all chose not to participate. You all chose not to gain a mutual understanding. Instead, you all extended Aguilar's contract when we know for a fact he's been defined multiple times by a judge in the court of law for acting criminally against his workers. In fact, since Aguilar has been here, SCUSD is now #1 out of 1,037 school districts in California for the most labor law violations. From these unlawful violations, you've used approximately $200,000 in COVID funds to pay for the legal fees and bad faith negotiators. But somehow, with over $300 million in COVID funds and an ongoing surplus in your general funds, I, as a teacher, still have to pay out of my own pocket for a Time for Kids subscription for my class. It's a shame that the district and the school board doesn't care to acknowledge the truth about the situation. They're proposing I work longer hours while taking a pay cut. What a shame. I yield my time.
Thank you. Next comment, Ms. Moretti?
Yes, our next speaker is Ingrid Hutchins.
I just want to say before I start that I am combining my time with Beth Conklin, Holly Conway, and Amy Smith.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening. It's good to see you all again. My name is Ingrid Hutchins, and I'm a second grade teacher at Golden Empire. Tonight marks the beginning of your work in the new school year. While this is usually an exciting time of year, the upcoming school year is causing more anxiety than not. This is not our first year that has been impacted by COVID. We should be better prepared for this, but we're not. We have precious few weeks to change the current trajectory, but that will require the board to create a new culture. Your constituents are angry. They are tired of receiving lip service. They are tired of secret meetings and the groupthink nature of the current board. You were elected as individuals, and your constituents expected you to think about the needs of your separate communities rather than the optics that unanimous votes provide. They really don't care about how passing resolutions builds your own political resumes. They care about how your unanimous votes negatively affect their children, how your votes don't provide the equity that you claim to care about. They are tired of unanimous votes that prove your affinity with a superintendent who does not have the confidence of over 90% of the employees in the district. They are tired of you not providing the oversight of the district that you were supposed to provide. They're angry that you don't truly represent the people who live and are educated in SCUSD's borders. They are so angry that a large group has voiced an interest in beginning the recall process. It takes a lot to get voters angry enough to put in the effort to attempt to recall a school board, but it's not hard to see how we got here. You all know the recent history of our district. Due to time constraints, I won't walk you through them all. Instead, I'll just update you on the newest items that have emerged over the past few weeks. Although the LCAP PAC created a very thorough plan for the upcoming year, the district's negotiating team has insisted on using proposals from 2019, which completely disregard some of the important components of the LCAP for this year. Approximately 700 summer school students have had to be quarantined. There are only about 2,500 students enrolled. While I'm sure the district will claim that there were no cases of COVID transmission in the classrooms, the data suggests otherwise. For example, on my campus alone, 4 reported cases occurred in a single classroom. The first case occurred within a couple of weeks of the other 3 that were then consecutive cases. Risking the loss of many students due to the district's desire to do the bare minimum to educate the students whose families wish to keep them home this year. The district that claims to be about equity has refused to provide a virtual academy, even though they realize that the BIPOC community will be underserved with their lackluster plan. The district's negotiating team still comes to meetings unprepared. They often can't answer questions regarding the proposals, including the reasons why the district is proposing certain items. We receive answers such as, "That's our proposal." The assessment committee met, but the district did not come with a proposal for the assessments. The district claims it wants to be a destination district, but it's proposing a 2% pay cut plus significant changes to benefits in its proposals to SCTA. They are coupling this with added hours that create no boundaries in the workday or workload. We all know that you can't attract employees by cutting salary and benefits. We currently have many open positions that most likely won't be fulfilled by the beginning of the year. For example, we have 2 full-time Spanish positions that will cause multiple classes of students to have long-term subs. We have lost numerous teachers and approximately 14 principals. We are losing essential staffing due to the mismanagement of this district. That rests on you. You allow the district to be the toxic environment that it is. You write and agree to substandard resolutions that provide little mandates that actually support our students. You ignored the employees of the district who have told you time and time again that things need to change. You ignored their vote of no confidence in Aguilar. When is enough enough? When will you, as trustees, stand up for the people who elected you? When will you stop being part of what has now been coined the Aguilar Yes Club? If you are truly here for the students of the district, stop playing political games and do the job you've been elected to do. There is very little time left to change things. The time is now. Thank you.
Next speaker?
Yes, our next speaker is Steph Rodriguez.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. My name is Steph Rodriguez, and I'm the mother of an incoming first grader. The district's email this week did not include plans for distance learning this upcoming school year, and that's highly concerning as we continue to fight this deadly virus. The lack of distance learning options for students is unacceptable. Sending children who are ineligible to receive the vaccine back to full-time in-person learning with no social distancing protocols and bare minimum health and safety precautions for teachers and staff is asking for the virus to run rampant through our schools and back into homes of parents and potentially the medically vulnerable. In regards to the vague independent study option, would my child have to give up his spot at the school he's grown to love? As a parent, I fear for his safety and well-being, and whether or not the district and its board are concerned if children spread COVID among themselves seems to be treated as a we'll cross that bridge when we come to it problem. We must put the safety of our children first and implement a robust and diverse education plan with options that work for all families. If independent study is your answer, does that program even have the staff to accept an influx of students? How about those with special needs? Our kids shouldn't be forced into independent study because the district failed to come up with a safe education plan that works for all families. That's it.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Yes, our next speaker is Teresa Hanneman.
Hi, I just wanted to let you know my name is Beth Hearn. Teresa has donated her time to me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a parent. I'm here to speak about the district's plan for return to in-person learning. As the parent of a child who's too young to be vaccinated, I'm not comfortable sending him back into the classroom with no social distancing while an even more contagious variant of COVID is spreading through the community. We're already experiencing high levels of COVID transmission, and this plan is guaranteed to get young children in our schools sick. The announcement that the district will stop notifying the community of positive cases indicates that the district is aware of this. By ensuring that parents have to purposefully go searching for this information, you've created a mechanism to hide the extent of the damage that this plan will cause. You've also ensured that only the parents that have the means to stay on top of this information will know what's going on in their children's schools. Very little information was provided about the independent study option. We're left wondering if there's going to be enough staff to serve the children in our district, whether you'll be able to provide certified teachers, and whether you're going to be able to accommodate students with IEPs. I need to know if my child's going to lose his place in his school if I choose to sign him up for independent study. I shouldn't have to choose between his safety and the school he loves. I feel that the district is deliberately misleading parents by stating that distance learning is no longer permitted. Parents are fully aware that other districts have created virtual academies and guaranteed return rates for their students. Why has this district not done the same? You've already driven teachers away from the district. Are you trying to drive students away as well? I've worked tirelessly to keep my child safe for over a year. With only months to go until he can get vaccinated, I refuse to be forced to put him in harm's way. Our children deserve to receive a quality education from home until they can return safely and to return to the schools which they had to leave in order to stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Yes, our final speaker is Terrence Gladney.
Good evening, Terrence. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I was gonna comment on the closed session item, but I didn't make it, obviously. So I'll use my time for that. I just want to address the high number of school site administrators that we had to hire recently. I know that some were because of relocation to other vacant positions, but that doesn't speak well to the culture and the status of our organization. We have so many school site leaders that are opting to leave our district. And I think that it's something you guys are required to evaluate before you grant an extension to our superintendent. I looked at the org chart that was recently updated as of June 8th. And in that org chart, the newly hired assistant superintendent for facilities is listed as a parallel line item in the org chart to Rose Ramos, and she received a raise under the premise that she was going to have to take over facilities. But everyone in facilities is reporting to that newly hired position. These are the sort of things that you guys need to ask before you make these blind decisions that are encumbering us with years worth of expenses. You guys question every single thing when it comes to teacher benefits and everything else, but these other things go unchecked, and that's your responsibility as elected officials. I want to echo all of Ingrid Hutchinson's comments. We just need to do a better job of making decisions that are student centered, and they need to come with actual data. You guys need to do better.
Thank you, Mr. Gladney. Was that the last comment, Ms. Moretti?
Yes, that was the final speaker.
Okay, item 8.0, special presentation, 8.1, vaccination clinic data and CDPH health and safety guidance. Victoria Flores, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. So good evening, Board President Pritchett, Superintendent Aguilar, and members of the board. I'm Victoria Flores. I serve as your Director of Student Support and Health Services. And tonight I have with me our Dignity Health partners, and we're just so thrilled and honored to have them here with us. So they're going to join tonight in sharing some of the data about the vaccine clinics and our partnership that started back in February. And then we'll take a moment to pause in the presentation and allow the board to ask any questions of our partners so that we can get them off and back to their evening. And then I will continue to walk you through the new guidance that has come out from CDPH about the health and safety measures that schools need to employ as we reopen. So with that, I am going to turn it over. So tonight we have with us, let me just say, Addie Hernandez, who serves as the Vice President of Administration, Jason Chang, who's the Senior Director, and Macy Young, who's an Operation Analyst. And I will just say, all of these folks are very familiar with the Cerna Center. They have spent a significant amount of time down there really helping our community as well as out at our school sites. I'm thrilled and honored to have them with us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Addie. And we can go next slide. Think of one more after this. Of course, we'll ground ourselves in our core values, and I'll turn it over to Addie now.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you some of the work that we've done in partnership with Victoria and Jorge. As we started this journey, none of us knew what was going to be in front of us. We all knew that we wanted to get vaccines into people in the communities that were underserved and the vulnerable populations. And we felt that the schools was a good partnership, and the population that you serve in this district as a target. And so we started the conversations, and then we built the capabilities, and we tracked what we actually did so we could report on it. And Jason has been the director leading the effort there, working very closely with Victoria. And Macy has been on the ground doing a lot of the work and training and helping staff. We had over 2,500 volunteers from the community across Sacramento and from other systems as well, helping us to vaccinate, starting with the over 65-year-olds and all the way down into the kids. So this has been an enormous effort, a wonderful partnership. And Jason, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Addie. Victoria, we can go to the next slide. As Addie mentioned, there were a lot of unknowns. If we rewind back about 9 months ago, the vaccines were just coming online. We had been focusing on previously vaccinating a lot of our employees and our physicians, making sure that they'd be able to deliver care. But we also looked towards the community, knowing that that was going to be the next big place that we wanted to be able to invest in. And so the challenge that we faced was there's broad-ranging distribution and in large part very unequitable. As you can see in this chart on the left-hand side, we were using a Healthy Places Index as kind of our barometer to see what kind of penetration we were having in the community. The quartiles indicate basically the health of a given zip code, where the blue and the light blue referred to basically the lower quartiles, the least healthy. And so you can see at the outset, we were starting from behind. There were not a lot of penetration within those zip codes, and not a lot of folks were getting vaccinated. And so by connecting and working with the community partners, as well as really closely with SEOC, we were able to make a lot of headway throughout that. And so I'll just call out that, Victoria, Susan, Paula, Stephanie, fantastic team to work with, and it was really great to work with them. But we also collaborated with Sac County, UC Davis, Kaiser, Sutter, and all of the other outreach partners within the county. And so it really was a collective effort that we went through to get there. And so not only did we focus on efforts with SEOC, but we had other efforts that we were working with throughout Northern California. But our team focused primarily on the Sacramento area. Next slide. As Addie mentioned, we're a lot of data nerds. And so we, as we were going through the process, we were collecting a lot of the information that we were going through, and we wanted to be able to report on it so we knew where we were making headway and where we needed to kind of go back and reevaluate how to do a better job. And so the same colors that I shared on the slides, the previous slides, the light blue and the dark blue, or the two lower quartiles. And so we knew that we wanted to locate the clinics that we were working through in those communities, being closer to it, because we wanted to remove any kind of barriers there were for vaccinations, because there was a lot of unknowns going on at the time. And so our effort was just to be as close to the community as possible to facilitate a really seamless vaccination opportunity with them. And so we also try to reflect on what the demographics were within the student population within the district. And so we were using that kind of as a barometer to see how effective we were in our vaccine deliveries. And so we started out at the Cerner Center, but then we also spiraled out to a couple of the different high schools in the area, including Hiram Johnson, JFK, and Luther Burbank. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of a lot of information crammed on here, but the highlight here is that, within the Sacramento County, we were working through about 31,000 vaccinations over the course of about 21 weeks. 17,000 of those were in conjunction with SDOC. And so it was a massive lift, working tirelessly with hundreds of different people, largely volunteers, giving up their evenings, weekends, and long days, delivering shots to countless number of folks. The biggest takeaway I can see here is, when I look at the quartiles of where we were able to get vaccinated on this chart on the left-hand side in the middle, you see the dark blue bar and the light blue bar. That amounts to about 93% of the vaccinations we gave were to those that bottom half of the Healthy Places Index. And in the maps on the bottom, you can see where the need was, and also in the yellow and red where we were able to make the biggest difference. And so you can see right in the middle of the county is like where we were able to make the most impact. And so we facilitated, I think it was over 20 different clinics, first and second dose clinics. We try to adapt to the community needs, let it be pre-registration, translation, walk-in, whatever we could do to help facilitate it and make it as easy as possible. And we tried to be as adaptable as possible. And so I think we had a lot of great success through this process. Next question, next slide, please. So, like I said, we had 20 or so different clinics that we did. What we were trying to track here is the differing demographics that we were able to penetrate as we went along time. So the green bar is the Hispanic population, the purple bars are the white population, the yellow is the Asian, and so forth. And this is all self-reported during the registration information that we collected. As you can see, one of the things that we're trying to do is work not only with within the lower underserved communities and vulnerable populations, but also making sure that we were penetrating with the minority communities as well. And so you can see that we definitely made some headway as we went along, and that was due to the partnership that we were able to use. Next slide. One of the changing variables that we were working with was the differing tiers that the county and the state were putting forth in terms of who was eligible for the shots. At the very beginning, it was 75 and up, and then they dropped it down to 65 and up, and critical workers and so forth. Eventually, we got to it where 12-year-olds and up were eligible. So, knowing that we wanted to make sure that we had teachers, healthcare workers, and critical workers covered, but then also students so that when they would be able to be safe in schools, you can see that increase in the green bars, and that was the 12 to 15-year-olds, and the teal color bars were the 16 to 17-year-olds. And so those are the minors that we were able to get vaccinated through this process. And I think one more slide, please. And I want to turn this one over to Macy, who did a lot of the heavy lifting too on site at the clinics and did a lot of the practice work at these clinics too.
Thank you, Jason and Addie, and I want to thank all of the Sac City Unified School District Board that's here today. With our opportunity, as Jason mentioned, to partner with SCUSD for community clinics, we really prioritize vaccinating our most vulnerable communities. And as we mentioned before, and also here on this slide, as you see in the dark blue and light blue columns, majority of the individuals that we were able to vaccinate at Sac City Unified School Districts were from the least healthy communities of Sacramento. And from personal experience of working at the SCUSD clinics, the people we were able to vaccinate would consistently express how excited they were to be able to be vaccinated somewhere that's close to their home at a place that they are familiar with and trusted. And of course, it was always amazing to see all the SCUSD staff and their families just being able to have a look of relief on their face by being able to get vaccinated and knowing that they have the opportunity to get to some form of regular in their school life and work. So at every clinic, the environment was filled with so much optimism, so much positivity. And I'm really thankful that I was able to have an experience to be at these clinics firsthand, to work with the amazing volunteers and the staff, and all the hard work that Dignity Health and the SCUSD team put into this to be able to vaccinate our community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dignity Health Partners. And with that, we can pause the presentation real quick and take any questions or comments from the board.
Do we have any comments or questions from the board? I just want to say, thank you so much. I mean, the amount of doses that were given, I read almost 17,000. That's just amazing, amazing work. So I just want you to know like how much we appreciate you as a board coming into our communities and helping our families out. I think we have one comment from Member Rhodes.
Yeah, no, I just, as we go back to school, I just want to say thank you, but then also I hope that we continue this partnership in whatever way that happens, even if it's here at CERNA or even micro type of vaccinations at our school sites as we keep moving forward. I think about the South area often, and currently 95823 is one of the highest spaces of we're getting more and more people that are getting COVID currently. And so these type of things have to be something that wasn't just then, but that's part of our DNA moving forward. So I thank you, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing more with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. We really enjoyed it. It was something out of the ordinary and something very extraordinary for my team and for all the folks in Dignity Health who participated. It is our mission. It's who we're committed to as people and helping our vulnerable populations. And it's not what we do on a daily basis. So it was something that was very exciting for us. And right now we're going into another surge. So we're back to the hospitals. We're working a lot of hours and weekends, and everybody needs to be masking again. And, we got to keep everybody safe. So push vaccines.
Member Villan?
I just wanted to say thank you so much. You did a lot for our community, and we really, truly appreciate it.
Great. The impact was very great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Superintendent.
Yes, I too just want to add our deepest gratitude to our partners at Dignity Health, starting with, of course, Addie Hernandez and your leadership. Thank you for choosing to partner with Sac City Unified. I remember the very first clinic that we held and the improvement mindset that you came in with, and our team adopted very early on. By the second clinic, there were adjustments that were made, and vaccination. I think it took longer for people to wait in the monitoring area than it did to get the vaccination itself. And that just demonstrated, I think, the level of partnership that we very quickly created with your team. I also want to acknowledge, of course, Victoria Flores and her entire team and the work that she has led across the district. I think we are a model for other districts, certainly from the perspective of the vaccination clinics, the testing that's taking place. We should feel very proud as a community, as a district, that our families can get tested at their local school sites, at CERNA, and that at least for Sac City Unified, we don't have to tell members of our community that they have to go seek testing from somewhere else other than their very own neighborhood school. But I do, again, just want to acknowledge our Dignity Health partners. I'm so impressed by the data that you presented, and recognize that in order to have that level of analysis, we have to have access to information, and that came from the actual vaccinations that took place. And I'll mention it a little bit in my report later, but the fact that we were able to vaccinate over 22,000 or give over 22,000 doses of the COVID vaccine is something that we're very proud of, and that it was all done in a district as diverse and as needy as Sac City Unified. I hope that everyone shares in that pride and gratitude to both Dignity and the amazing and talented staff and committed staff that we have in Sac City Unified.
Yeah, I agree, Superintendent. And it's always a reminder when we're at our board meetings, we're sitting in the boardroom and then the chairs and the stations are out here ready for Friday's next vaccination clinic. So just thank you so much for your work. All right, Victoria.
All right. Thank you so much, Dignity team. We miss you, and our hearts are with you as you're dealing with this next surge out at those hospitals. So
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
all right. Well, we can go to the next slide now. And so now we'll transition into an overview of the latest CDPH COVID-19 public health guidance for K-12 schools. And so this is just going to give you an overview. I'll weave in a little bit of what we've been doing and what we will continue to do as well. But this is really kind of focused on this current guidance. And the one thing I want to say is to please note that guidance is still pending and may continue to evolve or change, particularly as the realities of the pandemic continue to evolve and change, especially as we're dealing with Delta or any other.
Ms. Flores, if I can just interject quickly, I want to pause for a little bit. I think our live streaming is not up and running, so let's just take a little bit of a pause here. Hopefully, people can still hear. I do want to reiterate that as we're bringing back our live stream to our board and to our community, if you can hear, what Victoria just mentioned is very key. What we're presenting today is guidance as of today. And of course, that guidance may shift. We will be back on August 19th for our next board meeting. And what we share today may very well be different than what we share on the 19th. So please just keep that in mind, that we are going to continue to work very closely with our partners, both local and state. So treat it as simply where we stand today for all of the discussion that's taking place over the course of this presentation. We're still not up, so.
Superintendent, we checked on a cell phone and it seemed to be working. They just restarted some stuff.
Okay.
Is it not working on your
Not
end?
working. It's not working.
Can you try to refresh your screen?
Yeah, it's not. Okay, let me, on the web, let's see here. Now it is.
It's working. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Victoria, go right ahead. Take it from here.
All right. So really wanted to ground us in the foundational principle of this guidance is really that all students must have access to safe and full in-person instruction with as much instructional time as possible. We know there are also those requirements for providing independent study, but this is the guidance for bringing our students back for that choice that parents can make. And so that's what you'll see woven throughout this presentation, or really just this overview of the guidance. Next slide, please. And this really struck my heart as a parent. I'm a parent in the district as well. This is actually from the California Safe Schools for All webpage, the parent portal. And it talks about the importance of school reopening. And this is our California Surgeon General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, really talking about the importance of that what school closures really increased the stress-related physical and mental health issues for our students. We saw that in the data that was published by CDC. ER visits for mental health was up by something around 31%. We are hearing this from our students. Our previous student board member, Shake, spoke to this so eloquently. And so we know that having our schools open, safely for our students, our staff is really important. And so that's what this guidance is really going to overview, is how do we do this safely? Next slide, please. So again, this also is grounded in the science for safely reopening schools. So again, this comes from that California Safe Schools for All parent page. I really invite people to check it out and click through those links. And so one of the first things they talk about is that children are less likely to get and spread COVID-19. And this seems to be holding true. And if you remember what seems like ages ago, when the blueprint for reopening was issued and we were able to reopen schools, you'll remember we started with the youngest children first. That was who we got to bring back. That was grounded in this science that is really showing that children do not seem to be quite as infectious. Of course, things are still evolving, research is still developing, and there are new variants. So we will pay attention very closely to that science and any new guidance that comes out. We know that schools experience less spread, and we should feel pretty reassured about this because when we look globally at the research, it really holds. Particularly, let me say this with a caveat, schools that use layered measures, layered mitigation measures that were tried and true, experienced less spread. We know that community and social gatherings experience more spread. That is where we have seen the majority of our cases happening. Our guards are down, we're gathering with people, and that's typically where COVID unfortunately transmits. We know our vaccine is our best protection. We just heard from our Dignity Health partners about that. And then our layered approach is really what works. We've been doing this since the fall of 2020 when we opened our learning hubs, and we have seen consistently when we are on point with those layers, we are able to keep, our community safe. And COVID testing is going to become really important. We've been doing this since February. We've really built some great capacity and expertise, and we are ready to roll with more testing. So next slide, please. And so we wanted to also just call out that this is an actual public health order that says that all schools must follow the CDPH requirements that are in this guidance. So this is not a choice for schools. Any of the requirements in this guidance, we have to follow. It is not optional for us to, opt in or out of these things. So we just wanted to be really clear about that. And that public health order was issued on July 11th. This is actually at the front of our return to health plan. We've always kind of grounded in that so that our community can feel confident and reassured that we will be implementing these measures. Next slide, please. So we wanted to talk about the current reality of COVID-19 in Sacramento County. The Delta variant is here. It is the predominant variant in our state. This, and it is highly transmissible. We've seen some, recent CDC data that talks about it being as transmissible as chicken pox. So this is a different turn for us. We also saw recently published by the CDC just last week that this is why we need to be doing universal masking by all, regardless of vaccination. So this really is a mitigation measure that is directly linked to Delta and what we're learning about the science of Delta. And our face masks are really, really effective at stopping that transmission. So indoors, This is why we are going to be masking. Case rate, when I did this slide just a day ago, was 25.6. It's actually gone up to 27 new cases a day. So we are definitely headed in the wrong direction. Our positivity rate is 5.6% in our community. And just to give you a little bit of a comparison and how our layered measures are really effective, in our schools, our positivity rate hovers around 1%. So it's gone down. Now with Delta, it's starting to go up again. But 1% transmission in schools, 5.6% positivity rate. Sorry, I said transmission. 1% positivity rate in schools, 5.6% in the community. That's the difference in how COVID is transmitting in schools versus those social gatherings. We know, and we just heard from Dignity, our most impacted communities tend to be our lower healthy communities. They're experiencing COVID spread. They also tend to be vaccinated at lower rates. We continue to hold our clinics, and we are committed to continuing to do that. And while Sac County is really working hard to get our vaccination rate, the one thing I want to draw your eye to here is that our younger age groups continue to lag behind even the state average. But even when you look at that population overall, our younger age ranges are lagging. So we're really going to do everything we can to promote the vaccination. Next slide, please. So CDPH built layers of safety, and I wanted to include this Swiss cheese graphic. I believe it was Board Member Morawski that had talked about this maybe a year ago. I don't even remember the time now, but this is what we have used. We used this graphic in our Return to Health plan last year, and it really talks about no layer is 100% perfect. We know vaccination is not 100% perfect. We are experiencing some breakthrough cases, but then when we layer them all together, we create this tighter safety net. That is the foundation of the CDPH guidance. It's the foundation of everything we do here in our district. And so I'll take you through each one of these. Next slide, please. So we heard a lot about vaccinations tonight. I won't go too far on. However, Superintendent mentioned this number is actually updated. We did 2 vaccine clinics this week, one at CK McClatchy on Tuesday and one last night here at the Cerna Center in your boardroom. So we have vaccinated 22,330 individuals to date and counting. We have another clinic, I believe, tomorrow at Pacific, and then another one next week at Cerna. So they're free to everyone. All of our information is posted on our district website. We know vaccines are really safe. They don't use any part of the virus. We know it decreases transmission and helps us get that herd immunity. The more of us that are vaccinated, the lower transmission will go down. We know that vaccination also decreases the chance of severe illness or even potentially death. We know we're seeing some breakthrough cases, but that data is holding strong, that even if you contract COVID and you're vaccinated, you're not going to get as sick. It also, for our young people, this is a really big selling point. It allows them to continue to participate in activities or come to school if they are vaccinated and exposed to COVID. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. This is just a quick screenshot. I won't spend a whole lot of time, but we've done a really intensive social media campaign. We're building up another vaccination campaign as we speak. Tara Gallegos and her team have done such a beautiful job, really trying to pull on the hearts of our community. Hang out with your friends again. Get vaccinated, right? This was also when we thought we could take our masks off. Now we're back on. And so all of this information is posted on our website, susd.edu/vaccinations. We invite you to check it out. Next slide, please. So vaccine is our #1 mitigation measure, and we really want to encourage everyone who's eligible to get vaccinated as soon as they can. And I will just share at the CK McClatchy vaccine clinic, there were kiddos who just turned 12 and they were so excited to be there because they were eligible. But universal face masking is our #2 mitigation measure. This is one of the best things that we can do regardless of vaccination. We know some of us are able to get vaccinated. Some of us might not be able to because of health conditions or because of age. And this is what makes it so important. Everyone's required to wear a face covering at all times indoors in all schools throughout California. And now, of course, we have a public health order here in Sacramento County that reinforces that. We will continue to provide free face masks for everyone, just like we've been doing. CDPH guidance does allow for removing face masks when outdoors, when there's physical distancing or spacing. So I will say that if the conditions are crowded outdoors or you're doing something that requires close contact, that face covering needs to go back on. So in our comp high schools during passing period, we should see face masks on because we're going to have close contact. Of course, we're going to need to remove our face masks when we eat, but that's when we're going to practice physical distancing as well and get those face coverings on right away. Exemptions are really rare, but they're there, and we have a process for families to look at that. And CDPH is hoping to come back to us by November 1st, but the one thing we should hold in our minds, that too may change. And so we'll just continue to look at the science on this. Next slide, please. I spoke a little bit about this, but with universal masking, that distancing criteria is no longer required in schools, but CDPH does say that individuals should maintain as much physical distancing as practically possible, as long as we can get everyone back to school. So you'll see our classrooms, we're still going to separate and physical distance desks as much as we can while bringing everyone back. So it's not like it's completely gone. We're going to focus on masks, but also practice it as much as we can. During meal times, we'll be practicing distancing. And of course, we know there might be specific situations like speech therapy or others where we might have to temporarily remove a face mask. Then we will practice that distancing as well. Next slide, please. The guidance also talks about ventilation, and I'm really happy to say that, last year our district met all of the standards that CDPH has outlined, and we continue to do so. They've given some really great guidance on there, and we've definitely been benchmarking and making sure we're meeting that. Next slide, please. This is a big one. Staying home sick is, I would almost say this is our number three mitigation measure. This is a really important strategy. All staff, students, community partners, parents, everyone really should stay home if they're symptomatic. This is how we will keep COVID out of our schools and prevent spread. Symptoms are pretty expansive. And so here in Sacramento, where many of us are allergy sufferers, we really need to pay attention to how we are feeling, and we really need to make sure that we stay home. This is something that most oftentimes we will potentially kind of minimize, and I think it's just this, or I think it's just that. And I can tell you from experience, when we COVID test individuals, they've come up positive. And they just thought it was allergies. So we're really asking our families, stay home, come in and get COVID tested, and then we can get you back if you're negative. So next slide, please. I think, I'm going to talk to Rich, and then coming back, returning to school or work, the guidelines are 24 hours fever-free, symptoms have improved, and you have a negative test. That's what makes that site-based, school-based, or Cerner-based testing so incredibly important. We can test you right then and there, rapid test, get you back up if you meet these conditions. If you choose not to test, that's totally okay. Your doctor can provide you a note, or if you don't want to go that route as well, we'll have you stay home for 10 days. We'll get you your schoolwork and that short-term independent study, get you back into school or work. Next slide, please. So our COVID testing program, this is where it becomes really important, right, for meeting those kinds of guidelines if someone's symptomatic or we have some kind of exposure. We have a really robust partnership with CDPH. We have done to date, I can tell you this slide is now outdated, over 16,000 COVID tests in our districts from February to now. We'll provide testing at every single school site in the care room on a daily basis. People can access testing as needed. We will also offer that surveillance testing. We do have the PCR testing, and now we also have the rapid antigen. So you get the results in the 15 minutes and we can know right away. And then children 13 and over can consent, or parents can consent. It's just a single registration for parents one time this school year, and you've consented, and we are good to go with testing. We've been testing all summer. We actually did 2 pilot projects with CDPH around testing, just to make sure we're really building our capacity and expertise to be as responsive as we can. So we're really excited to continue this program. Next slide, please. So now we get into some of the contact tracing requirements, and there are some changes here. So I'll spend a little bit of time going through this, but please just know we have been doing contact tracing since the beginning of the pandemic. We continue to do so, and we follow all the legal requirements, including reporting every single case to our Sacramento County Public Health Office, so that we can trace and contact work and school related, and we let them know so they can also follow up with any community. Sometimes they blend, and we'll do both. We'll do whatever we can to help. Next slide, please. So this is a big change, and remember, our guiding principle is to keep students in school as much as possible. And so CDPH is offering a modified quarantine only for students. Let me just say this only applies to students, and it's conditional. It has to be students who are face masked with close contact exposure at school. So it can only apply to an exposure at school, and that's because we know the mitigation measures that are in place at school, because we're required to use this layered mitigation measure. So students who are fully vaccinated, no symptoms, they're good to go. They meet that vaccine exemption and they can come back to school with no other conditions, as long as they remain symptom-free. They start to get sick, we have to kick in those stay-at-home protocols. Students with no vaccination, whether they just haven't been able or aren't able to get it, or they don't meet that age requirement, with indoor masking, we have to be sure that indoor masking is happening. They may come back to school as long as they are agreeing to meet these conditions. There are no symptoms. They continue to wear the face mask, which we will all do, and they have to consent to test twice a week for that 10-day period. They also have to refrain from extracurricular activities, and that includes after-school program or daycare. And so if families choose not to, want to meet those requirements, maybe they don't want to, have their student tested, that is okay. They will default to that 10-day quarantine. This is just allowing and giving that option of continuing to come to school. Next slide, please. There's a little bit of a different guidance for staff and then for students who are exposed in the community. So I'll talk through those real briefly. So staff with close contact exposure to COVID, whether in the community or at work, still have to follow those Cal OSHA and CDPH requirements. If they're fully vaccinated, and we've been doing this since vaccine, came out and was issued, they meet that exemption, they're good to go. And let me just say, fully vaccinated is 2 full weeks after your either a single dose or your second dose. And we have those definitions in our plan. For staff who are not vaccinated, they're going to have to quarantine for those 10 days. Now, for a student with a close contact exposure in the community, this is different because we don't know what those mitigation measures or that level of exposure was in the community, so they offer up a different quarantine. Fully vaccinated, again, good to go. They can come back as long as they're asymptomatic. If they're not vaccinated or age eligible, they will have to quarantine. There is a modified or shortened quarantine that they can qualify for if they meet specific requirements. After 5 days from the date of exposure, they have to test negative, and if they're negative, they can return on day 7. You can see this gets really detailed and a little bit complicated. So we are working how we're going to track all this right now. But our goal, again, is to have our students in school as much as possible. Next slide, please. Our isolation recommendations, completely the same as we've been doing already, and they just reiterate and go over them. It's a 10-day isolation unless they're still symptomatic or feverish, and we have had people be sick for quite a long time. They're going to still have to be out that whole time. Next slide, please. This one's pretty easy. Our hand, cough, sneeze hygiene. We're still following all of those protocols, all the PPE in our schools, hand sanitizer, hand washing, all of those measures we have had all along, and they're just reiterating that those are important as well. Next slide, please. Same for our disinfecting procedures. So we did really learn in the pandemic, and last spring, we didn't need to disinfect as much as we were. And so we kind of pulled back on that and really focused on high touch areas. It's that balance between disinfecting and a lot of chemicals, around students. And of course, if there was someone sick and diagnosed with COVID physically present at work or school, we disinfect that area as well. The focus is really more on hand hygiene than disinfecting everything. Next slide, please. They also speak to vaccination verification, and this is something our district has been doing ever since we started issuing quarantine exemptions based on vaccine, just really reiterating you have to follow all the privacy laws and rules, and of course we will continue to do that. Next slide, please. And lastly, they really encourage districts to be transparent. And this is something I'm really proud that we've been able to do, to post publicly our plans and be transparent about how we are implementing these health and safety protocols. Our return to health plan does serve as our safety plan, our CSP, for in-person instruction, as well as the Cal OSHA required COVID prevention program. And I'm really pleased to share that our revised return to health plan is now publicly posted on our district website for 21-22. And please but with the caveat that will continue to be updated as this new guidance is issued or the pandemic evolves. Next slide, please. And so this is some of the pending guidance that we're still waiting for. Athletics is a huge one, and they have not issued it yet, although maybe they've issued it tonight. And extracurricular activities such as band, we're getting a lot of questions, and we know that people have, activities planned. So in the meantime, we're advising those teams and activities to follow that current guidance. Our return to health plan is now up on our website, so we're really excited to have that out there. And then we did hold a training for our principals just this week, updating them on what we know currently now, what our guidance is now, really, letting them know we're going to continue to be flexible. We're going to continue to shift as we need to. And we will continue to adapt and advise, revise as our public health officials guide us to and the science guides us to. And with that, next slide, it's question and answer. That's it.
Thank you, Victoria. We have 2 public comments before we get to questions.
Yes, neither public speaker is online currently.
Okay, we will get to questions first. Well, thank you so much, Victoria. I just have one word, and it's wow. I just amazed by the work that you and your staff have put into this, because I know it's just ever changing. I mean, you had said just from the time that you did your PowerPoint, how those numbers had changed, and then you're talking about something else. You're like, it could be posted tonight. I'm just wondering, when do you sleep? So you are doing an amazing job for our students and our staff to keep them safe, all of us. So just thank you for the work that you've done. I know that it's been a huge undertaking, and I want you to know how much we appreciate that. I have one question, and I don't even know if it's something that's even been considered, but for our comprehensive high schools that have very large groups that are going for lunchtime at the same time, has there been any thought, and maybe the superintendent can weigh in as well, has there been any thought of, and I know this is probably opening a can of worms for master scheduling, but has there been any thought of doing a first and a second lunch to kind of separate them so that way there's not large groups entering at the same time?
Member Pritchett, we have asked Diana Flores to be online with us so she can describe what our current plans are for nutrition services. But I do want to acknowledge, I stepped away. We're aware that the live stream, while it is working, it didn't include the slides. And so I do want to make sure that our community is aware that the presentation is available on our website. I apologize that you couldn't follow the slide as Ms. Flores was describing the information. But again, it is on our website, and we would invite you to download it and access it through our website. But I do see Ms. Flores has joined us, so she can take the question about nutrition.
Thank you.
Board Member Pritchett, thank you.
Hi.
Thank you for your question. We do have outdoor food service plan for the comprehensive high schools. We have a number of carts that we purchased last spring and additional outdoor service and snack bars and other areas where we will serve outdoors. We do have one comprehensive high school, John F. Kennedy, that will have 2 bells.
I figured you guys were on top of it. I just had to ask the question.
No problem. Thank you so much.
All right. Is there any other board questions or comments? Member Villa and the Member Morosky?
Again, this is a wonderful presentation because I too, as a parent, there's a lot of questions that I have about sending my child back. I know a lot of parents have reached out and feel the same way. So I'm glad this is on the website because we have to make sure that we get this information out, school site, down, as much as we can express, because a lot of people don't know the process. Is there a way, I know we've talked about this before, but for the testing and opt-in or opt-out, I think that's a lot of people have reached out to me and are very concerned with the testing situation. You know, if children are still in school and they've been exposed, do parents have to opt in or opt out to test, or is that just going to be mandatory that we'll be doing for that child?
Yeah, so the testing is voluntary just for regular routine surveillance testing. But if their student has been exposed to COVID in the classroom and they were deemed a close contact, for them to be able to return, they have to test. So that's where it sort of kicks into, I suppose you'd say, that mandatory, because it's a condition of being able to use that modified quarantine.
Okay. And I know many schools have successfally already returned last year and have followed a lot of these protocols. So it's good that we kind of have a map. This is kind of another question similar to what President Pritchett had mentioned. Kids are eating outside. Are we going to have established areas? Is it possible even with outdoor classes? I know a lot of people are concerned about children back in an indoor space, even masked. So is that something that we've discussed that I can share? Or is that school site down?
I can answer that, Member Villa. So we are recommending at the elementary levels, both indoor and outdoor seating for students. And I know some principals have considered like AM kinders that go home at lunchtime. They may take their lunch home with them. And then indoor seating, they would sit only 6 students per cafeteria table, 3 feet apart.
Perfect. And then my last question is, if a staff member, say a teacher, has to quarantine, what is the protocol for that? Are we having subs on back that we're ready to go? Is that going to be, I'm concerned on if the students show up and the teacher's quarantine, what is our quick rollout?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So right now we've been dealing with that, reality even currently. And so, yes, we would be looking to get a sub in there, and I don't know if, CAO Beato's got other, thoughts about that. But yes, I mean, that's what we've been doing kind of all summer and all fall.
Okay. And again, I mean, a lot of these things, I just want to be very clear, making sure folks are acknowledging that we are doing, the work is here. There's a lot of information. I know it's a lot to digest and understand, but I just want to make sure that our families are very clear, our teachers are clear, all of our staff are clear what the rollout is and the protocol. So thank you very much.
Good questions. Good questions, Member Villa. Member Morosky?
Thank you, and thank you, Victoria. It's an incredible job that your team has been doing and you've been doing, and I'm sure we're all tired of pivoting, but we're still pivoting. So just thank you. I wanted to follow up on a question about the testing. I would like to, and maybe you don't have this available, or if you do, you can speak to it. And if not, would want to just ask for kind of a follow-up report on, whether there is value in doing that surveillance testing on an opt-out basis, something that's like a more regular, whether it's weekly or I don't know what makes sense programmatically. I know we have COVID funds to do the mitigation and everything. But so just wanted to see if you have any comments on that first.
Yeah, so we are planning to offer it weekly, but right now, the state is just saying you have to offer it. And making it, kind of opt-in. We're really encouraging it. We did a pilot program over the summer that was incentivized. CDPH offered a $25 gift card if anyone, actually, students or staff, tested 3 times. It was wildly popular. And so we believe in surveillance testing. It really helps us understand what's going on in our communities so that we can be targeted and traced and stop that spread. So we will do everything in our power to encourage people to register and routinely test.
Oh, okay. So can we do, I guess there's a continuum of things you can do. So maybe it's not opt out in that you do have to consent, but you could make it like a regular part of this is all your forms for the year and this is your consent form. There's things that we can do to make it a very, to get a high participation versus just, you have to go and do something. So, what are the plans to, within that continuum of things we could do to encourage? What are our plans so far?
Yeah, so we did speak with our principals this week. We've made that flyer just very easy and accessible. So it's a QR code. You actually consent, online. So I think some of our sites will really encourage to help. And it translates to every language, the website. So we can also give parents access or help walk them through and register their student. We really want to make sure they have informed consent and know what they're registering for. Even if they're already registered and their student comes to the care room and is symptomatic, our practice is to call or reach that parent just to reconfirm that this is okay with you and your student's symptomatic and what would you like to do. So and I know I've already had principals reach out to put that flyer in their packet. We're asking them to talk about that at their back to school nights or orientations or all of those activities schools do. Post that poster out front because you can also use the QR code to scan, and a lot of us have cell phones. We will also have 2 health aides out at every school site because we're bringing twice as many students back, and they've done a lot of parent education and outreach. Many of them are bilingual as well, and we really try to match up our health aides with communities that have. So it's just a lot of education and information. We also have the capacity to test that family if we need to. We're not a community testing site. We just don't have those resources. But when we find a positive case, we invite that whole family or household in if they would like, right? It's always a choice so that they can know and they can test right then and there. So it's really sort of that end-to-end, system of care. The beautiful thing about our testing program is it automatically reports to the state and to county public health as well. So if you have any other ideas for how we can promote testing, we welcome them. This is something we would really encourage our community to do.
Okay, I see. And, it's like, we would be okay with making it opt-out, but you have to consent to it. So it does, in effect, it has to be an opt-in because you have to do that consent form. Okay, got it. Thank you. I wanted to also ask about, a couple things. Ventilation, what more can we do? And I know that's like a facilities question more so, but I just want to put that on folks' radar because I don't know that we have, a facilities presentation. But, given variant and the increased, transmissibility or, and frankly, what else could happen with variants and, we just don't know, but it seems like, we can't go wrong with trying to really make sure our ventilation is as good as we can. So if we can do more on that front, I would like to see what else we can do. I wanted to ask also about vaccinations. There have been, in recent weeks, many employers have announced vaccine mandates or announced, a verification requirement. And if you don't have that, then you have to get tested. Have we discussed that for our staff, our teachers? I have a very, very hard time thinking about a scenario where, one of our staff gets infected with COVID and is in a classroom and potentially exposes, children who are too young to get vaccinated. And they have to be out of school and, like all of these, this ripple effect throughout our entire community and for the kids. And, when there's a safe and effective and free vaccine available, it's just like, I just have a really hard time with envisioning that scenario. So I'm just wondering, like, where are we at with kind of vaccine penetration within our staff that we know of? And have we considered, just further measures to make sure that we can get to as close to 100% as possible?
Superintendent, do you want to speak to this one or yeah?
Yeah, I can. Certainly that is part of the kind of discussion that we were hoping we would have with our board, Member Morowski, because I just saw a notice in one of my apps that there was now been a new order for mandatory vaccines among health workers for the entire state. And I suspect that we're going to continue to hear more and more entities, if you will, short of a mandate that is similar to the one that was issued today for, say, K-12 staff, if you will. This would be subject to negotiations, and we're aware of that and are assessing what an MOU might look like. We did hear last week that San Jose Unified issued such mandate. That didn't come with an MOU, and so we are doing that assessment today, right now, as we're presenting actually on that topic. The other thought that we have considered is what Victoria just mentioned in terms of incentivizing individuals, both students and staff, and figuring out how we might consider using some of our one-time funds for such purpose, and also recognize that would be subject to negotiations as well. As I said, what we're presenting today is simply as of today. I think things are going to continue to shift, and that is an area where perhaps things will shift because there is a new mandate, but certainly we want to hear from you as our board members and from constituents, so that we can present something over the course of the next few days, and certainly before or as no later than August 19th, which is our next board meeting.
Thank you. I just want to say that I'm fully supportive of whatever measures that we can take. I just think with a safe, effective, and free vaccine that is so protective of not only the individual, but the community and the people that they love around them, frankly. I just think we all have a moral obligation to do this and to, do everything in our power to encourage, among staff or units or whatever groups that we are part of to get it done. Unless somebody has a medical exemption or a need not to. But if you can do it safely, just to do that. So I'm very supportive of any efforts in that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, Thank you,
Thanks
Member
for all of your work.
Morosky. And I also want to just, again, recognize another area that we spoke of today. As of today, we know that there is no order that impacts whether or not our students have to wear a mask for outdoor activities. We also think that that is, again, an area that we might see some shift in the orders, and that may change by the time we start school. Victoria and her team are working very closely with Dr. Kasiri and her team. So these, again, are things that may shift by the time we reopen the vast majority of our schools. We know that New Joseph Bonheim and New Tech will be opening on Monday of next week, and then the rest of our schools will open on September 2nd. But again, I just will ask our community to continue to monitor our communications as the best source of information for what to expect as we start bringing back our students for the next school year.
Thank you. Member Wu?
Thank you for all you're doing. Just a thought, in case you haven't thought of it yet, but children, in particular when they're eating lunch, will be outside most of the time, but when it starts to rain, have we contingency for that?
You know, that's a great question. We have started exploring that, and I see Diana Flores pop in, so I'm going to pass it over to her.
I think we're still working through some of those details. I know that came up on a principal's office meeting that I had today, and unfortunately, we haven't had a lot of rain in California, but we will have to come up with a solution for that. We do also have a lot of pop-up tents and other things at the school sites since last spring that could help with some of that as well. But we will work through those details as well.
All right. Are there any other board member comments or questions? Member Rhodes?
For Ms. Flores, just very quickly, are students receiving cold lunches still, or are receiving hot lunches going into the new school year?
Sorry, I wasn't sure which Flores.
I'm sorry.
What, I couldn't hear your question. Are they receiving cold lunches or hot lunches?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, our plan is to bring them back with hot meals. I mean, I say that sometimes they get a salad, but yes, with hot meals.
That was my only question. My other colleagues asked great questions today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you again for all of your work. Please thank all of your staff. Keep up the good work. You all deserve a round of applause for the work that you're doing. This is an informational item. I'm sure that this is not the last time we're going to be hearing about this. So we look forward to seeing you back.
Excuse me, President Pritchett, our two speakers are now online.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Our first speaker is Daniel Darby.
Do we have the second speaker, Ms. Moretti?
Yes, the second speaker is Kara Sinhorst.
Good evening. Some of my questions have been answered. I thank you for that. In general, I'm flabbergasted that the district's plan is to do the bare minimum required by state law to protect our students during this pandemic. No students under 12 have been able to be vaccinated. Only 35% of ages 12 to 17 have been vaccinated in Sacramento, and the Delta variant is at least 40% more transmissible than the original virus. You need only watch the news to see children's hospitals filled to capacity and schools closing down after mere days. On this date last year, when we were all planning to return to 100% virtual learning, the 7-day average new case rate in Sacramento was 108. Today, that 7-day average is 482. If we were still using the color-coded system, our case rate would be more than 3 times as high as required for the purple tier. I feel like we need better answers about how we will be notified about possible COVID exposure, how lunchtimes will be handled, of whether students will be required to mask outdoors, as the newest research indicates they should, of what robust testing actually means, and of how our students will be included in learning if they have to quarantine. Please don't do the absolute minimums to protect our children and community. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ms. Moretti.
And the final speaker is Daniel Darby.
I don't see Mr. Darby on. Do you? He's muted? Oh, Mr. Darby, you are muted. If you could please unmute yourself. Are you able to unmute him? No. And are you able to unmute him? Okay, Mr. Darby, if you can hear us, you are still on mute. If you could please remove yourself from mute. Okay, if he comes back, we'll get back to that comment. All right, item 9.0, public hearings. 9.1, public hearing, first reading of revised board policy 6158, independent study. Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Bozio?
Good evening, Board of Education, President Pritchett, and Superintendent Aguilar, and Raul Bozio, in-house counsel, here with Chad Schweitzer, Instructional Assistant Superintendent. We're here to present to the board the first reading of our proposed revisions to Board Policy 6158, Independent Study. Next slide, please. So the Education Code authorizes districts to establish independent study programs. This year, just on July 9th, the governor signed into law AB 130, and that includes changes to the independent study programs and education codes, and requires that all school districts offer an independent studies program in this upcoming school year, absent applying for and receiving a waiver. And in addition to the programmatic changes to the independent study programs, AB 130 requires new elements that need to be incorporated into the district's written policies and written agreements that they enter into with all students choosing to enroll in an independent study program. Next slide. So firstly, I would preface the presentation by reminding the board that the district's independent study policy has not been updated since 2002. So with that in mind, the policy is updated generally to comply with all of the Ed Code requirements concerning independent study that have taken place since that time. And that is even beyond those new elements that are contained in AB 130 for this year. So just know that when you look at the draft, the revised policy, a lot of strike through and a lot of new language. But we're going to focus here tonight on those new elements that are required under AB 130 for our independent studies program for the coming year. Of course, our independent studies program has been in compliance with those other Ed Code requirements up to this time. But now we have some new requirements under AB 130. And under AB 130, as I mentioned previously, some of the new requirements concern the written agreements. Always had to have a written agreement between a student, parent, and the district in order for that student to enroll in our independent study program. But some new elements are required to be in those written agreements for this coming year. And primarily, those include the two bullets you see on the slide here. The first is the manner, time, frequency, and place for communicating with the pupil's parent or guardian regarding a pupil's academic progress. And secondly, a statement detailing the academic and other supports that will be provided to address the needs of pupils who are not performing at grade level or need support in other areas, including English language learners and students with disabilities. Next slide. AB 130 requires that the district update its policy, hence why we are bringing it forward to you tonight. I will say also that our model policy here, our policy that we're bringing forward to the board is modeled on the CSBA model, which was just put out subsequent to AB 130. So following the CSBA guidelines here. In addition to AB 130's requirements for items that must be included in the written agreements, again, the law requires that we update our policy to include a number of important items that and many of them do parallel what's also included in the written agreement, such as the first bullet. Our policy now includes an identification of the level of satisfactory educational progress, what that means. And it discusses, in addition to the number of missed assignments that would be allowed before an evaluation must be conducted to determine whether it is in the best interest of the student to remain in the independent study program or return back to the regular in-person program. Those indicators are also included. The indicators of satisfactory educational progress include the pupil's achievement, engagement, completion of assignments, and learning required concepts. Again, our policy also is required to include the procedures for tiered re-engagement of independent studies pupils who are not generating more than 3 school days or 60% of the instructional days each week. This piece, for example, and some of the other pieces that you'll see that are required for independent study do not apply to some of our students who may take advantage of what we refer to as a short-term independent study, which is for less than 15 school days. Next slide, please. And again, some of the key revisions that are contained within our updated policy 6158 include those on this slide. I've mentioned a couple of them already. The satisfactory progress, and what that means in order to evaluate the student's continued placement. Provisions of standards aligned content in independent study that is substantially equivalent to the quality and intellectual challenge of in-person instruction. For high schools, our independent study program has to provide for courses that are aligned with and creditable under the A through G admission criteria of the UC system, CSUs. Procedures for tiered re-engagement strategies, I mentioned those previously, for when students are not showing adequate progress or sufficient progress. A plan to provide opportunities for synchronous instruction for all grade levels and live interaction for grades 4 through 8, which we'll follow up on a little bit more on the next slide. And again, a plan to transition pupils whose families wish to return to in-person instruction from independent study expeditiously and not later than 5 instructional days from the time of that request. Next slide, please. As I mentioned just previously with the last slide, for transitional kindergarten in grades 1 through 3, plan to provide opportunities for daily synchronous instruction. For grades 4 through 8, plan to provide opportunities for both daily live interaction and at least weekly synchronous instruction. And for our high schools, a plan to provide opportunities for at least weekly synchronous instruction. In addition, we are required to document pupils' participation in this live interaction and synchronous instruction and retain that evidence of a pupil's engagement in instruction for auditing purposes. And with that, that concludes the presentation. We can take questions.
All right, I believe we have 7 public comments.
Yes, our first public comment is from Sid Johori.
Hi. My name is actually Shonda Wesley. I was given this as a donation from Sid to join you today. And I just want to talk a little bit about what happens, not so much during independent study, but what happens afterwards. You know, the Delta variant has been raging. We've all been talking about that tonight. And many of our safety protocols are built on what COVID was in 2020 and what it was in the spring. That's not what we're dealing with now. We have a case rate that is now 27%, and it is going to peak again in 2 to 3 weeks, which is right when school is opening. Applied to our students, with the current numbers, that's 13 a day, 91 a week, 364 a month. The American Association of Pediatricians and the Children's Hospital Association reported out that 19% of the new COVID cases are children. And we still don't even know what the long-term effects of COVID are on our kids. I want to vaccinate my kid before they go back to school. I want my kid to be able to go back to the school where they are currently receiving instruction, where they have friends, where it is good for their mental health to be back with their friends after they're vaccinated. By the way the independent study program has been explained, if we take our kid out, there's no guarantee that they will return to the same school. The district is penalizing the students if their parent chooses their health first and puts them in independent instruction. The idea that parents are forced to choose between our child's physical safety and their mental health is absurd. The district should have a spot at our current school for our kids to re-enter their lives with their friends after being vaccinated. And the district needs a plan for when COVID forces us, when and if COVID forces us to go back to distance learning. What happens?
Please wrap it up.
Yep, I will. I didn't see anything in Assembly Bill 130 or in the draft of the independent study that prohibits some creativity due to this pandemic. And I would like to encourage the board to consider having 2 separate options. One for children who wish to be vaccinated or are just too young yet, and one for who are eligible to be vaccinated and can still go to the regular independent studies. We should be able to take our kids back out once they're vaccinated and take them back to their original school. That's just 2 separate tracks. And I encourage you to consider that for parents who are trying to do the right thing here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment?
Our next comment is from Ingrid Hutchins.
Good evening again. In the spring, you were asked on numerous occasions by many people to create a virtual academy. When you eventually wrote it into a resolution, you purposely used weak language that told the district to simply look into it. At the board meeting on May 5th, I told you the word used in the resolution was not strong enough. I warned you that the bare minimum would be done by the district and that families would want to leave to find districts that actually cared about the education of students whose families felt safer keeping them home. Here we are, August 5th. We are doing the bare minimum. Families have voiced a desire to leave the district. It shouldn't be like this. I've spoken to many families and employees over the past few weeks. They are upset. They feel unheard. They are rightfully angry. Their area trustees aren't answering their emails to discuss their concerns. The district has chosen to disregard the educational rights of a large group of students, which includes students who have IEPs, our students who receive EL services, and our BIPOC students. Independent studies isn't what our families want. They are asking for an education that keeps them connected to their home schools, communities, peers, and teachers. They are asking for what every child deserves, a quality education. Trustees, you were presented with an opportunity to create an amazing home learning program. Teachers wanted to assist in the planning, and as we are the people who have taught both in person and virtually, we are the ones who actually have experiential knowledge. While there are many bright, capable people working in the district offices, none of them have any experience in pandemic education, but your teachers do. Instead of treating us as a pariah, you should invite us to the table to ask us to create a program that would work for all of our students. We are very concerned by the district's insistence on separating students from their school communities. There's no reason why you can't offer at-home learning that still keeps students connected to their beloved schools. Each school could provide virtual learning for their own students who don't want to attend on-campus classes instead of doing it through another school. Every school could provide dedicated virtual teachers to provide daily synchronous instruction, check-ins, and community building that keeps our students feeling like they're part of their home school. The social and emotional well-being of the students who want to learn from home is as important as it is for the students who are learning on campus. Every high school can provide the AP instruction that is missing from the district's independent study plan. Many parents I spoke to have stated that your plan seems punitive in nature and is meant to force children into classrooms instead of allowing parents to decide for themselves how to best
Give
protect
questions,
their
please
own
wrap it up.
I will. I just want to put out there that we still have 4 weeks left before the beginning of the school year. And trustees, this is the perfect time to show your constituents that you are serious about giving them exactly what they're asking for, a safe environment for their students that still keeps them connected to their own schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment?
Our next speaker is Terrence Gladney.
Terrence, you're on mute. If you could please unmute yourself. Okay, and if we can get back to Terrence, we'll go on to the next speaker.
Yes, Daniel Darby also requested to speak on this item.
Thank you. Mr. Darby, you are on mute. If you could please unmute yourself.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you
Hello?
now. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome back. I think I have the same concern that I've been hearing, but I'm not exactly sure it's the exact same. But I looked at your COVID dashboard, and I was a little bit surprised that for the month of July, that was one of the higher rates of positive cases that we've had. And that might be because of the Delta variant. And the number of close contacts was actually the highest that we've had. My concern is that was for summer school. And I don't know the population that you had for summer school, but I know it's not the full population that we have for the school year by far. So I'm a little bit concerned that we're going to have students and teachers going on quarantine here. And based off of what I heard of Ms. Flores' presentation, that's going to be like for 10 days. That's like 2 school weeks. And she mentioned this independent study, and if it's what I just heard, I don't want my kids getting like 2 packets of information then just said, okay, we'll see you in 2 weeks. We've just gone through, a pretty torturous school year for 20 to 21. And is there some way that we could somehow give a student support when they're on quarantine, like have like an on-call teacher group based on subject or something like that, such that they can get help? Otherwise, all he has is just a packet in a book. And in all honesty, that's not good enough. I want us to do better here, and I think we can do better. So I would hope that you can figure out some type of resolution to a problem like that, because coming off the year that we've just had, I want us to do better, and I think we can. So please,
Mr. Darby, if you could please wrap it up.
Do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Do we have Terrence back?
Our final speaker would be Terrence Gladney.
Okay. Terrence, are you here? You are still on mute. So sorry, Terrence, we are unable to take you off of mute. If you can hear me, could you please remove yourself off of mute?
Okay, I apologize, Terrence. We're going to have to come back to your comment. And was that the last comment, Ms. Moretti?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize, Terrence. All right. Any board comments on this item? Yep, Member Villa.
Just the one question that I had, obviously, this is challenging and like, Lisa had mentioned, we're constantly pivoting. So if students do leave out of their school, decide to do this, they are able to come back and they will still keep their spot at their school. Is that correct?
Try to physically distance with Raul here too. Sorry, we're standing next to each other. Our current practice is students would disenroll from their school of residence and enroll into Cap City. So it would be a checkout and a check-in. I'm exploring what different school districts are doing. One such school district that I'm aware of in Roseville, they are not saving a spot, but I am exploring what other school districts are doing because we do have a few options.
Okay, that is a concern that I've heard, and concern for myself personally, but I want to make sure that our kids can come back to their neighborhood school, their community school that they've been in. So whatever we can do to look into that, I think that's really important for our school district.
Yeah, currently, obviously the best result would be to return that student to the same school, same teacher, same classroom. In the current situation, if a new student did enroll into that school, it may take that person's spot. But there are pros and cons to both methods. If we don't reserve that spot, it might allow another student to enroll. It might allow us to bring a CONCAP student back to their home school. So we're just exploring what those options look like right now.
Okay. And then just one quick thing, and that was mentioned too, obviously if these students are back at home, it's the old way of doing things that we did last year, which wasn't very engaging. It was hard. Are we able to maybe look at creating some kind of mentoring group with other students, with teachers at the school site, so they do feel a little connection back to their school? I thought that was a question that was asked, but that was also emailed to me. I want to make sure that these kids do feel a part of their school when they're gone.
Definitely. And that is included in AB 130 with the synchronous instruction as well as the daily interaction. That does include peer interaction. So I hope to be able to build that into their daily where they have breakout rooms or small group instruction where they are with their peers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Member Villa, if I could just expand a little bit. Admittedly, this is an area that is still causing a lot of confusion across the state. There are still webinars that are being planned that have been organized by the Department of Education, for example. In our case, because we are an open enrollment school district and we have a lot of students that attend schools outside of their neighborhood boundaries, if you will, that is the reason why we're also wanting to look to see how other districts that have open enrollment policies like Sac City, how are they managing that? Like everything, there's pros and cons. And again, we will come back and provide a recommendation before the school year starts. But we recognize that is anxiety producing. And as Mr. Schweitzer mentioned, I mean, it's an area that we're very aware of and we're looking into those pros and cons, but we don't want that type of anxiety either to drive our work over the next few weeks. So we're aware of it and we'll make sure that we come back and provide greater clarity.
All right. Member Phillips.
Just a quick question regarding the purpose of independent study. This is not for, this is actually just a point of clarification. This is not for students who are quarantined. This is for children who choose to disenroll, sign up for a new school completely and absolutely, and then hope that they get to come back to their old school.
Correct. There are two opportunities for independent study. Under the quarantine, we would use the short-term independent study. And that is traditionally maintained back at the school of residence. The teachers would provide work while the student is on short-term independent study. We typically set the teacher up with per diem after school so that they can do the extra work. the AB 130 is addressing those students who do not wish to return to in-person learning on a more permanent basis, and they would have that opportunity to enroll in Cap City for independent study. And then, as the law states, within 5 days, if they chose to return to their school of residence, we would accommodate that request.
So this is not a substitute for, not a substitute for virtual learning.
Correct.
Are there any other public or any member roads?
Thank you. The return, the idea of right to return, is something that I would support. Something I think that we should look at. Neighborhood schools are strong, and due to this pandemic, it's forcing people to have to think differently about how they're engaging with their education, and if they're deciding to move their child because they don't feel safe, but they still value their neighborhood schools, and they live in the neighborhood and want to be part of those schools, whatever school they're part of. I believe they should still have access to that, and we have an opportunity to be creative, flexible, and really think about the end user in this. So I would implore that we do look at that as something as a board that we might want to look into it as to move forward. I know might be a little bit tedious on staff end to try to figure that out, but we can figure it out because it's difficult. Doesn't mean it's impossible. And so, along with that, I had a few questions. When it comes to Cap City is in Area 5. And the question that I have around that is when we're talking about the regulations of AB 130, how does that look at Cap City when you're talking about kindergartners and all the way up to 12th grade and providing them synchronous learning or having opportunities for synchronous learning once a week? Like, what does all of that look like at Cap City? I think most parents and community members that I've spoken to have been very confused around, like, what does that mean and look like at an independent study level? Because most people believe, just like I think Mr. Darby was saying, that you're going to get 2 packets of papers and that's it. You go home, come back and turn it in. But that's not necessarily what it looks like. So could you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it does vary with each segment. Traditionally, the elementary students would meet with their instructor or teacher twice a week during the traditional model, and the secondary teachers would meet once a week. They would get instruction on their subject or their grade level that they're participating in. They do get a packet of work, assignments, a project to complete that they would do independently at home. And then next week, when they come back in to check in with their teacher, they would review the work that they completed, answer any questions, get any further instruction, and then continue that process until the course was finished. So we are a course-based independent study program. So at the secondary level, they typically take 1 core class and 1 elective class. So they might have an English and an art, for example, where they're working on both of those classes simultaneously. Last year during distance learning, we did transition into Google Classrooms, doing things electronically to assist with no contact. But that's traditionally the way the program works.
Going into this year, I would figure that Cap City is not just running as usual. What's the plan? I know the traditional way, but what is the plan for Cap City, and what does it look like going into this year with these set of new criteria and these sets of new situations?
Definitely, yeah. So we met with SCTA, so obviously this will need to be negotiated and part of conversation with SCTA. But at the EK through 3 grades, we do have daily synchronous instruction that takes place, so that will be a major change, especially for our younger students in EK through 3. We'll also have daily interaction in grades 4 through 8. Which will be a change so that we have that opportunity to check in with a teacher or a classified or an instructional aide or peers with their fellow students. So those are some positive changes that we have an opportunity to improve upon at Cap City for sure.
Amazing. So daily instruction K through third and daily interactions from fourth through eight. You were saying?
Correct.
I'm just clarifying so
Yes, sir.
that people are
Yeah.
actually hearing. Okay. So yeah, these are obviously there's more to dive into, and there's going to be new guidance, which is I can't say that's fun, but it's our reality, and it causes anxiety when people don't know, but know that on our end of it, this is something that we are very very serious looking at how do we service our community the best, right? With guidance changing constantly, and with this new Delta variant, that being vigilant and having enough information for people to have is going to be very important. So I do appreciate you and your time and what you're doing. I look forward to talking with you more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Phillips. And then I have a few questions as well. Yeah.
Sorry, I gotta play devil's advocate or confused parent. I'm gonna play confused parent right now. So my kid, I don't want to send them to school, but I shouldn't be sending them to Cap City. And I'm trying to tie this together with the quarantine again, because we have a short term, 15 days or less. That child is not signed out of their school. Correct?
Correct.
Are they participating in something other than Cap City, or Cap City is actually providing that type of instruction for those students?
On the short-term independent study?
Yeah.
On the short-term independent study, traditionally, the teacher of record that the student already has as their classroom teacher would provide that short-term independent study.
And so if you're going to do per diem, it will be like after school virtually?
Right now, it would be virtually since the student is quarantined, yes.
Okay, but again, it's not a substitute for virtual education.
Correct.
Okay. It's really confusing. You know what I'm saying? Parents are like, my kid gets quarantined, they go to Cap City for 10 days, and then they go back to their regular school. Other parents are, my kid might get sick, or my kid is in a position where I don't want them at school because maybe they're not vaccinated, and they go to Cap City and they lose their place at their school possibly. Okay.
I agree, Member Phillips. It is really confusing just because we are kind of like working off of new horizons of like everything's so interchanging. And I just want to say thank you for kind of like thinking, working with the Assembly bill and trying to figure out ways. And I know this is the first reading, so by this, they'll be coming back to us and then, kind of implementing more. I did have kind of a question about kind of going off of what Member Rhodes was asking about, like disenrolling and how come we can't keep them. Is there something that has to do with the ADA? Because I know for just even pre-COVID, right? That, if the kids, if they go to another school, then the ADA would not follow them. And so because they're going to Cap City, would they have to disenroll because of the ADA? Is that the reason why?
No, it's not because of that. Yeah, as soon as they would re-enroll, that would trigger to have the ADA reinstated again. It's just because we're going from one school to another. So right now, we treat it just as if you were going from Ethel Baker to Pacific. You're changing schools, so you check out of one school and then enroll into another.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to, I know that you guys will be putting a lot of work into this between now and when you bring it back to our board. Member Morosky.
Sorry, I have to sneak in there.
You got 6 minutes, just letting you know.
Oh, yeah.
Just playing with you, no?
So, yeah, I guess I wanted to follow up a little bit on Member Rhodes' comments, and just wondering, if you can speak a little bit more to kind of how ready we are to implement the policy, or what. I understand that, we're talking about the policy, but the policy is also our plan for what we're ready to do this fall. So I understand everything's changing and this is all happening quickly, but kind of what volume are we expecting or planning for? What do we think we need? You just talk a little bit more about readiness and implementation.
Yeah, definitely. So we did send out an interest form on Monday, August 2nd. That interest form has generated, prior to this meeting, about 200 responses. And as I've been checking that each day, it has been pretty consistent across the grades where it's, about 15 or so students in each grade. So it is pretty equitable from about 1st through 12th grade. Cap City is currently not staffed to accommodate that many students. They are currently staffed at about 325 or so, I believe, was their projected enrollment. Mr. Amorine, the principal, is getting ready to start re-enrolling students who are returning from last year. So if we did infuse another approximately 200 students who have shown interest today, we would definitely need to increase that staffing to maintain contractual class size limitations, number of preps, and so forth. So those would be the things that I'm looking at specifically regarding the contract. We also want to ensure that we're not affecting other contractual things like split classes from schools where students are disenrolling, for example. So we're definitely keeping contractual guidelines and language in mind. We're also aware that they currently have one counselor, so there will be some staffing needs for additional supports, not only academic, but social emotional. And traditionally, we have not served English learners or students with disabilities at Cap City. So under the new AB 130, those are both called out that we need to make services available for students. So providing special ed services, English language development services will all be new as well. So that's all going to require some new ways of thinking, new staffing. And part of this process is also a pupil educator parent, so a conference prior to enrollment. And just thinking about that right now gives me, kind of raises my concern with 200 families. There's 200 meetings right there that need to take place. So while we do have 4 weeks until school starts, there is some urgency to get moving and start preparing the site to accommodate the parent request for a meeting as well as enrollments.
Okay. And then, yeah, it seems like a lot to pack into these next few weeks. So I just, Godspeed.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say at this point.
It is, Member Morosky, and again, I would just point to so much of our work in other areas. There is a very strong cross-functional team that's been meeting. Today, you're hearing from Mr. Schweitzer, Mr. Bozio, but it also includes Mr. Brown from Constituent Services. We are very fortunate to have a lot of expertise in-house with principles related to independent studies. Of course, both Cap City, Success Academy as well. And so this is a group of very committed individuals that have been meeting virtually every day on this topic. And so I appreciate your comment, but I do feel a lot of confidence in the cross-functional work team that's been studying this issue as, again, we continue to receive more guidance and more clarity. This is a legislation that took effect not very long ago. And as I've seen in several emails today, there is a lot of folks at the state level that are trying to interpret that statute as well. And so we're doing our best, and we will do everything to make sure that we are operating with the intent of that legislation.
Okay, well, really appreciate your work, and just please keep us updated as to the progress that we're making. And I will just say that, I am supportive of this approach. We're not planning to recreate an entire new virtual kind of learning environment. I think we tried that last year as a matter of, emergency. And, I think we're moving forward. We're coming back to school, and I would just encourage, we've seen it all over the world. We've seen it all over our own country, that we can operate schools safely with layered mitigation, that's the right place for our kids. And, I would just encourage, anyone listening, any, family and communities out there, let's come back to school. Thank you.
All right.
With no other public comment, thank you for that. I want to back up just a little bit on the agenda. We have our stellar student online now, so I'm going to hand this over to Member Rhodes. I believe we have our stellar student and Principal Mua.
Yes. Today, we're going to bring you guys back over to the South Side, Area 5, to Susan B. Anthony Elementary School with Feng Mong Song, the sixth grader. The stellar student, Susan B. Anthony, he's a rising sixth grader. Feng Mong was nominated by his expanded learning program manager, Rocio Perez Ruiz, with the following statement. Feng Mong is an experimental scholar that is present at all aspects of the program. He is not scared to participate, and the best part is seeing him grow and come out of his comfort zone, which is something his parents really wanted for him when they enrolled him in Freedom School summer program. She is happy that she was able to witness the change and growth of this scholar, and he is a true Bobcat. And we cannot wait to see what Feng Mong can do to overcome things through time. Way to go. We are so proud of you. And all of I think we have Principal Mu as well here online. And from everybody in Area 5, everybody at Susan B. Anthony, thank you so much for your participation. You are amazing. Thank you.
Feng Mong, can you please unmute and put your video on also?
What do you say? Hi.
Feng Mong, do you have anything you would like to say? Or your mom?
Yeah, I'm very, very happy that he got to participate this summer, and he was very quiet. He wasn't stepping out of his comfort zone, and I noticed that the program has really helped him to come out and participate and be active, and that's what I needed to see in him going into high school and junior high, and I really wanted that to come out, and I want to say thank you.
No, thank you. It's parents that are supportive like yourself that put their kids in situations to grow. And obviously the staff, from teachers to the school program to the principal, that really pulled this together. So it was really a thanks to you guys and everything you guys do. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Member Rhodes. We are moving on now to 10.0, Communications, 10.1, Employee Organization Reports, SCTA.
Yes, David Fisher is reporting.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I'm David Fisher, President of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. Last spring, we invited the school board to appoint an elected member to join the district's team in its bargaining with our bargaining team, representing virtually every school site and department throughout the district. That invitation still stands, by the way. If you had, you would understand why the certificated and classified staff voted by a margin of over 96%. They have no confidence in Superintendent Aguilar. Here we are, approximately 28 days until the commencement of the 21-22 school year, and the district does not appear to be prepared. Last spring, more than 48% of Sac City students chose to remain in distance learning even after in-person instruction resumed. Rather than follow our suggestion last spring to create a virtual distance learning option like some surrounding districts have done to accommodate those parents who are not comfortable seeing their children return to in-person instruction, SUSD is now scrambling to ramp up an independent study program that is not set up to serve the educational needs of thousands of Sac City students. Just today, in negotiations, we asked Chief Academic Officer Christine Beta several times to explain why the district rejected the idea of a virtual learning option. She refused to explain, repeating only that, quote, the district chose to only pursue an independent study option at this time, end quote. Perhaps the best person to explain the district's reasoning behind not offering a virtual option that would keep students connected to their home school would be Superintendent Aguilar. He's not participating in any discussions with teachers or over what are arguably the most significant issues facing the district at this time: how to safely provide the best possible education to students during this pandemic. Additionally, the district has not explained how it will accomplish meeting the needs of students with disabilities whose IEPs will need to be changed to allow those students to participate in independent study. Also of concern was confirmation from the district that for a student to enroll in independent study, that student will have to disenroll from their home school and enroll at Cap City. As a result, students who wish to return to their home school will not have the right to return unless there's an open vacancy. And this includes a student who spends 21-22 in independent study but wishes to return to his or her home school in 22-23, but only if there's a spot open at that time. So rather than creating a virtual academy option for students who desire to stay at their home school, the district is creating an untenable choice for many parents. Either send your child to an in-person classroom at your home school, even if you don't believe it's safe, or enroll your child in an independent study at Cap City, even if independent study is not the best learning option for your child. And you need to give up your child's spot at the home school. There is a better way, but Superintendent Aguilar, according to CAO Beta, refuses to consider it or even explain why you decided against giving even this option to parents and students. In the last several days, the district has asked Instructional Assistant Superintendent Chad Schweitzer with the extremely challenging responsibility of working through the myriad of issues related to independent study and compliance with AB 130. We have a great deal of respect for Mr. Schweitzer and have offered to meet with him immediately at his request to work through these complicated issues. We hope that Mr. Schweitzer will be empowered to work with us to address these issues. The district's bargaining team could also not explain why the Sac City LCAP states that one of Sac City's highest goals is to, quote, recruit and retain highly qualified staff with an emphasis on multilingual staff and staff that reflects our district's demographics, end quote. In the LCAP, the district has committed to the Sac City community that it will spend $18.5 million on adding an additional 146.5 teacher positions to, quote, provide additional staffing to high-need sites across the district to reduce class sizes and expand access to programs, end quote. And yet the district has rejected our proposal to reduce class sizes and increase services to students, including additional reading intervention teachers at every school site. The LCAP also obligates the district to spend an additional $14.2 million in 21-22 to, quote, maintain a competitive salary and benefit package for certificated staff and to increase the district's ability to recruit highly qualified candidates, retain experienced teachers, and reduce overall turnover, end quote. Directly contradicting the LCAP, the district has demanded $20 million in health planning concessions that would reduce the average Sac City teacher monthly take-home pay to $750 per month. That's an average. We asked the district lead spokesperson to confirm that the district's bargaining demands were in direct conflict with the LCAP. She did, stating, "That's our proposal." Rather than help Sac City recruit and retain certificated staff who reflect the diversity of the district, Superintendent Aguilar is moving the district in the opposite direction. And rather than promote a new spirit of collaboration in the district, as he has stated in the 5-minute video he released last month, Mr. Aguilar's leadership continues to promote distrust and adversity and promises to increase even further labor unrest in Sac City. There is a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Do we have any other employee organizational reports?
No.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to 10.2, District Advisory Committees. Do we have a representation from Community Advisory Committee?
Yes, we have Taylor Kayada reporting for the Community Advisory Committee, and then Julius Austin for the African American Advisory Board.
Fabulous. Go ahead, Taylor.
Okay, thank you. My name is Taylor Kayada. I am the current secretary of the Community Advisory Committee. One of the hot discussion topics at the CAC meetings over the past year and a half has been distance learning during the COVID-19 pandemic and how that uniquely impacts students with disabilities. Some of our students have performed well, if not better, in distance learning, and others have suffered. It has also been difficult to ensure our students have continued to receive the services called for in their IEPs, which their IEP teams have deemed necessary for them to receive a free and appropriate public education. We have been forced in many cases to accept changes to services that could not be provided virtually and have been given limited methods to update our IEPs to reflect students' current needs due to the assessment backlog that remains outstanding. As we approach the 2021-22 school year, our concerns related to the pandemic remain relevant. We are concerned that the district's independent study proposal does not meet the needs of students with disabilities, especially for those students who have been performing well in distance learning or who are unable to return to the classroom for whatever reason. The change you are proposing tonight of essentially removing our status quo from the past year and replacing it with a more traditional independent study program is problematic. Our students deserve to keep the distance learning model they've become used to over the past year and remain in traditional but virtual classrooms for all grade levels. Forcing these children who want to remain in distance learning to essentially enroll in a different school also presents huge problems for their IEPs. We are concerned that IEP teams will be disrupted, students will experience disruption in services, and the students will have no clear path at their school to return to their current school and the support networks they have at those current schools. We urge you to consider your independent study plans anew for next year and to keep the status quo that we have now or something like that that allows for some sort of a hybrid model that keeps kids in their current schools with their current IEP teams. Additionally, the district has yet to address concerns the CAC has raised with you over the past year about ensuring students with disabilities are able to recover from pandemic disruptions to their education and continue to receive an appropriate education moving forward. Many of our students experienced losses of special education services over the past year and have not been given the full opportunity to catch up on their IEP goals. Beyond that, the pandemic and distance learning have changed the baseline for many of our students. Some have regressed, some have been affected by new issues that require additional services, and some have changed in ways that require new IEP goals. More importantly, some students who did not previously have IEPs may now be eligible for them, especially for our youngest students whose teachers may not have seen them in class last year, and so had not yet identified their special needs. In all cases, assessments and the ability to meet with IEP teams to update IEPs are needed. The district needs to be prepared for an influx of new special education services next year. We are concerned that the district has not seemed to make this a priority or communicated plans of action to the community. On a personal note, I would like to share a similar sentiment to what Member Phillips said earlier this evening about Board Policy 6158. I'm also a confused parent in this area. What you're proposing tonight is not what your community has asked for. We want an option for our kids to remain in their schools, but to have the option to participate remotely until they feel safe returning to the classrooms. And as I said in the CAC statement, this applies especially to children with special needs. For young children like mine, that may mean that they will go back to the classrooms only in a couple months when the vaccine becomes available for them. We're not asking for them to unenroll from their current schools and to sign up for traditional independent study. We're asking for an option for them to stay safe for a limited amount of time until they're comfortable returning to school. Thank you.
Thank you so much. African American Advisory Board?
Good evening. I am Julius Austin. I am glad to be here to represent the African American Advisory Board as the chair. Since our last report to you all back in June, we have done a great deal of work, including engaging with Stephen Fong in regards to the local control and accountability plan to see where our recommendations that were adopted in May of 2019 align with the LCAP crosswalk. We also have had a advisory board member who applied and was accepted to the LCAP Parent Advisory Committee. We also have provided both a letter and verbal public response to the Kit Carson incident. We've stated our concerns, and we also stated our expectations for resolutions and our desire to see supportive services and continuing supportive services for the students and families affected. We also stated our expectation to be included, deeply included into the planning, the selection, the implementation of professional development and supportive services for students. We also have continued to hold our monthly advisory board meetings, and we've been doing a great deal of work to create steering committees to help continue forming our board and to increase our capacity to hold you all accountable to the recommendations that you adopted in May of 2019, and to analyze where there may be a need to revise those recommendations or create new recommendations to align with what students and families are currently facing, including all of the things that have been brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic. And we that moves us into a lot of the things that we heard tonight, right? We hear that many people do not feel safe in regards to in-person learning, and people have a desire for virtual learning. We know that the infectious nature of the Delta variant has changed things drastically over the past few weeks. And I pose a question to you all because I'm not hearing a lot about disproportionality. How are Black children and families being considered in the district's plans or the district's return to school plans? How are Black families being considered in regards to the local control and accountability plan? How are Black children and families being considered in regards to the learning continuity and attendance plan? Furthermore, how are they being considered for the C6? I think it's important when we look at the disproportionality that Black students and families are facing in regards to COVID-19 impacts. I'm talking about the infections, access to the resources to be resilient to the pandemic. I think it's worth it to pull out Black students and families and highlight the focus on them. We see that this summer there has been issues with infections. We see that there's been issues and concerns in regards to student discipline. And so we also recognize that there are some concerns in regards to communications in regards to the changes. And we know that we're all dealing with having to adapt to new guidance and new regulations. But I pose you the question one more time. How are Black children and families being considered? And I hope that you pose that question to yourselves and to all district staff and personnel.
Thank you, Julius. We have no other of the committees, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Item 10.3, Superintendent's Report. I do apologize, Member Phillips, go ahead. Did you have a question or a comment on 10.2?
Yeah, I do. So I guess, when we talk about disproportionality and we talk about counting Black families and Black students, we don't have a category specifically for our Black students specifically. Am I correct? Because we're always talking about economically disadvantaged. That includes special education. That includes, so there's all these boxes that Black folks fit into, but we're not being looked at by ourselves. I mean, is there a way that we could do that?
There is, Member Phillips, and what I can do is I can make sure that I send information to our board members. If you remember, during the board adoption process in June, we presented metrics in the LCAP, and they had each of the goals had a distribution of different groups of students that each of the goals would track, and one of the groups of students are Black students. We also had Latino, we had Asian, and then underneath the Asian, it had all of the other groups, so Hmong, Laotian, Vietnamese, and so I can share that again with the board. But we do disaggregate data down to the level of groups of students by ethnicity, by race, socioeconomic status, English learner status, and I can make sure that we send information so that you're able to see it.
But are we making any progress on that? I mean, you know what I mean? We can disaggregate all day long and still be looking at, numbers that don't match other students.
Sure.
So, I mean, I'm listening to the questions that were asked. How are we supposed to present to the community, the Black community specifically, that we're actually caring about them or paying attention to what their needs are, making changes to what the needs need to be? What is, I mean, and I like I said, I could talk about that all day, but
Sure.
it's just, those are questions that really should be answered. So, I mean, specifically what he was asking, it would make more sense for us to really look into that deeper instead of just the data, because I think there's more than just the data. And I would like to really kind of dig into that a bit.
Sure.
Thank you, Member Phillips. All right. Superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you, President Pritchett. And I would like to come back to Member Phillips's point related to not just disaggregate and not just demonstrate that we have the capacity and the dashboards to do it, but how do we monitor and make sure that we can demonstrate growth in those very important metrics and indicators. Today, I do want to just recognize that as we heard public comments and emails that I've received from many of our constituents and emails that I've received from board members who have received emails from constituents as well, as we begin really in earnest to think about the beginning of our new academic year, I know that there is a great deal of anxiety in our community. A lot of it is because of the seemingly ever-changing guidance from local, from state, from federal entities. And as you heard this evening from Victoria Flores and all of our other colleagues in the health and safety update, I am certainly grateful for the collaboration that we have continued to see from the California Department of Public Health, our staff, of course, community partners like Dignity Health, Sacramento County Public Health, and other partners. I really do think, board and community, that we can ensure that our students return to a safe learning environment for this next academic year. We will reopen, as I said, as early as Monday at 2 of our schools, New Joseph Bonheim, at New Tech as well. And then the vast majority of our schools will then open on September 2nd. As you heard from Victoria Flores, everything that we're thinking about at this time is based on the guidance as of today. And I'm sure that that is going to continue to shift and evolve, and we will continue to keep you and our community updated as best we can. For example, CDPH has determined that masking should continue and should remain in place. The reality is that for us, that has continued. It never shifted. Our board meetings ended with us having our masks on. And even when the state lifted its orders, we still continued because we are in the K-12 sector. I also think that our district has gone above and beyond to ensure that our students are safe. And I would certainly be open to any further inquiries about any kind of thoughts or claims that there have been outbreaks and that we haven't been transparent to our community. I have full faith and trust in our staff who have engaged in the contact tracing, who have continued to work with Sac County Public Health. The reality is that we have and will continue to expand doses of COVID vaccine to our community. Over 22,000 of those doses have been administered. But we also should be very proud and will continue to expand around our testing capacity. And I think that that is both extensive and unparalleled in terms of the access where we provide testing at each and every one of our school sites here at the Cerna Center for our entire community. We've provided over 15,000 of those on-site tests, and yet our case rates remain at around 1%. And just to put that in perspective, the Sacramento County case rate is about 7%. So as we continue to test more individuals, we're seeing more positive cases, but that is still relatively low compared to the Sacramento case rate. I certainly look forward to having as many of our students back on campuses. As you know, and you adopted in the budget, we are preparing to make sure that we provide not just the academic, but the social and emotional supports. I also would point to a recent McKinsey and Company report that was just released that highlighted the impacts of unfinished learning, what they have termed as unfinished learning. There's a lot of debate about the term learning loss. And so several policymakers have posited that we should talk about it as unfinished learning. And the report was very clear. that as they looked at assessment results for more than 1.6 million elementary students across 40 states, the disproportionate impact for Hispanic students, Latino students, particularly in low-income and urban school districts like Sacramento, was very, very marked. Our end-of-year assessments, and this goes a little bit to Member Phillips's question and comment, the data are very bleak in our end-of-year assessments, and we spoke about this in June. Only 39.3% of our students were meeting or exceeding standards in ELA, and less than 30% were exceeding standards in mathematics. So our data falls in line with the demographic research from McKinsey and Company in their report. The impact, of course, is cumulative, because if we can't help our kids recover from any of that unfinished learning, they will continue to fall further behind. And the experts at McKinsey, PACE, the Council of Great City Schools, continue to emphasize what we're very committed to doing. One, that we prepare to provide in-person instruction and in-person learning. I think that we have done that. Our numbers show it. Science says it. Our kids need it. And as Member Morowski stated, I too want to invite as many of our students to return to school as early as next Monday. That we continue to assess student growth through benchmark assessments. State mandated tests are required once a year, and that certainly is not enough for us to strategically target learning interventions and curriculum supports. It's not enough information for our parents to help us intervene and demand interventions on behalf of their students. And our district just candidly has to figure out a way of implementing benchmark assessments across the board for all students across the district. That we implement a restorative restart. And I think we did it through our Summer Matters program at over half of our school sites. In some ways, we engaged in a restart before the restorative restart in the fall that has been called upon by PACE and other researchers. We've demonstrated that a robust MTSS framework can serve our students very well, and we're going to continue to focus on implementing a robust framework across our district. Through MTSS, we've talked about it. We will help our students who experience stress, trauma, learning loss during the pandemic through tiered intervention and outreach strategies. We think that our approach will ensure that ongoing student engagement and appropriate supports are extended to meet the students' needs, academic, social, and emotional. But we also need every one of our partners to be on board, including our entire community. We need to move quickly with a great degree of impatient patience, as I've called it, but of course putting our students first, putting them at the center of our work. Now, I can't imagine a more important time than today to make sure that we're clear about that focus. So with that, I'll yield back to you, President Pritchett.
Thank you, Superintendent. Very well said. Considering that we are going to have to go back into closed session, I'm going to forego my president's report tonight. And 10.5, our student member is not here this evening, so we will go to 10.6, information sharing by board members. Anyone? Okay, all right. 11.0, consent agenda. Can I get a motion? Second. Thank you. I got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Thank you. Item 12.0, future board meeting, date and locations, August 19th, 2021, and September 2nd, 2021, same place. We will see you then. Have a good evening. Can I get a motion to adjourn? So moved. Oh, Ann?
We're going to move into closed session.
Oh, we're going back into closed session.
We'll come back and adjourn the meeting.
I just said that too. Yes, we are moving back into closed session.